Hello, it's Monday. Our word for you today, it's July the 8th. 2 prayer principles. How many volumes of books have been written about prayer? You can read and read and read about prayer, but really the best thing to do is to pray. In Matthew chapter 6, verses 6 and 7, Jesus is giving some instructions to the disciples on praying. Verse 6, he says, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." Verse 7, "And when you pray, do not keep on babbling like pagans, for they think they will be heard because of their many words." Some people take this and say that we shouldn't pray in public. Jesus is dealing with an issue here, and that issue is the public display of self-righteous religious people who trying to look better than everybody else by their public prayers. He tells us to do 2 things when praying. One is to pray privately. Doesn't mean we always pray privately, but he says, why should we pray publicly if we don't pray privately? Jesus gave the example. Oftentimes he went off by himself to pray and talk to God. And then the second thing he tells us to do, besides pray privately, is don't try to impress with flowery words. Pharisees and Sadducees were constantly standing in public trying to impress people with their obnoxious prayers. So 2 things he tells us is if you're going to talk to God, spend time privately talking to him. And God is not impressed with a bunch of words. Besides those 2 things, is there anything else we can learn from it? Well, know who you are talking to. Pray to your Father in heaven. Jesus says, pray to your Father in heaven. When you pray, you're having a conversation with God. Are you having a conversation with him, or are you praying at him? Some people, when they pray, it doesn't sound like they're talking to somebody. It sounds like they're talking about somebody to others. So in your prayer, just talk to God like he's a normal person, like he's right there. Know who you're talking to. It's a lot easier to have a conversation with somebody that you know than somebody that you don't. And then the next thing, be genuine and real with God. Don't try to impress him. We're not going to impress God. God wants to love us. He wants to know us and love us, and he wants us to know him and love him. None of us like people who are fake with us. We've all run across people who put on an air of pretentiousness and try to be something that they're not to try to impress us, and that doesn't work because that's easily seen through. Well, God's the same way. How do you think God feels when we go to him and we just rattle off a prayer to get that checked off our box that we prayed for a meal or we prayed for this or that? God wants us just to be real and wants us to be genuine with him. Let me ask you, is God pleased with your prayers, your prayer life? There was a couple, they were on an airplane and they ran into a storm and the plane shook and it would drop 50 feet in 50 feet segments every now and then. And people were crying, yelling, screaming, praying out loud. Just all kinds of things were going on. They were promising God that everything, they were asking forgiveness for sins that they had done. They just begging him to save them. All kinds of things were going on. It was a loud, chaotic time. 30 minutes after landing, they're all standing around the baggage claim area and kind of looking at each other sheepishly. Do you think they knew who they were talking to? Some of them may have, some of them may not have. But what this couple recognized was that people had the Lord's Prayer, the Lord's model prayer. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. And they had it backwards. See, our prayers are to start off with a relationship and then go to action. Oftentimes we start off with action and go to relationship. You say, what do you mean? Oftentimes we start off with action with things we want, and then we recognize who God is. But the model prayer and what Jesus tells us in praying is know God first. It starts with the relationship, then it goes to action. And you think about people you're close to. You talk to them and get to and you're visiting, catching up, and then you go to maybe the reason that you're there. Rather than you go up to them and you talk about the reason and then ask family and everything, ask about their family's doing. But 2 prayer principles. Why would you pray in public if you're not going to pray and talk to God privately? And then the second thing, don't try to impress God. Just be honest. Just be real with Him, because that's what He wants. He wants us. He loves you. So when you pray today to God, think about, are you talking to Him or are you talking at Him? Have a good day.